two men who were arrested in Mbabane in Eswatini for their alleged involvement in the murder of Kiernan, aka Forbes, and his friend Tebello, Tibz Motsoane, will appear in the Manzini Magistrate's Court this morning. The state is expected to make a formal extradition application for the Ndimande brothers, Siyabonga and Malusi, to be taken back to South Africa to answer to the crimes they allegedly committed. Well, we've got Newzroom Afrika's Mweli Masilela following that story for us. Mweli, the extradition application was supposed to be made last week, but it did not happen. Can we expect for it to go ahead today?
Naledi, there's been quite a lot of questions about what's the delay all about in as far as this formal application is concerned. And when we reached out to the Director of Public Prosecutions in KwaZulu-Natal, all they said that they are actually going to make sure that what they've started, they do conclude it, and there are procedures in terms of the extradition law, the limits as well in the number of days after the provisional arrest that must be allowed in terms of making that formal application. So they are still within that 30 days. So from their side, they are still, they maintain that they are on track in as far as this extradition application is concerned. We saw last week that we were expecting that formal application to be done or to be processed in court, but it didn't happen. In fact, what we saw is that the state, represented by Tebello here, the prosecutor, made another application to have detention of the exhibits, which are actually 4 phones that were found in possession of the two murder suspects. And that application actually, in simple terms, Naledi, it means that they want those cell phones to be actually taken back to South Africa. And we know that obviously there's been quite a lot of communication since that murder of AKA happened. And we know that once the police in South Africa have possession of those cell phones, they are expected that they might be able to access quite a lot of information. But in terms of that application, the magistrate presiding over the case, David Kumalo, made it very clear that after the defense opposed that application, it will be taking place today. So we are more expecting that the focus to be on that application to have those cell phones taken to the South African Police Service today, more than having that formal application of the extradition process, because from the side of the lawyers representing the 2 murder suspects, Naledi, they've made it very clear that they'll only entertain that issue once they receive those documents. And from our understanding, until this point, they haven't received those extradition documents, which means that this case is likely to be postponed again to next week. But it will be interesting in terms of that application that I've just spoken about, that of the detention of the cell phones, as to how is it going to unfold. Is the defense going to oppose that application in court, and what will be the arguments from the side of the state? What will be the reasons that they will be pushing forward in terms of making sure that those phones are taken to the South African Police Service, Nalindi? Of
course, more delays bring about the concern that then you're seeing the delays really in the bigger case that's unfolding here in South Africa. Just from the representatives of South African authorities that are there in Mbabane, who are we seeing in attendance today?
So in such a case, the extradition process, in fact, it's about these neighbors communicating with each other using those diplomatic protocols. And it's just South Africa, in this case, saying that Eswatini, can you please assist us, as they've done in as far as the provisional arrest is concerned. They're saying this: we want these 2 people, which is Siyabonga and Malusi, to be taken back in South Africa. Here is the evidence that we have. These are the crimes that they allegedly committed in South Africa, and this is the evidence that we have. So the South African side presented that case, and Eswatini entertained this case. So they don't really need to be physically here in Eswatini. So basically the state here in Eswatini is the one that is handling this process, and once the process is done this side, then they will then take over. Once the 2 are taken back to South Africa, everything will be handed over. So it's actually the state here being represented by the prosecutor in Eswatini, Tebello, who is actually moving that case to say that these people actually have to be taken back to South Africa. And these are the cell phones that were found in their possession when we arrested them in Mahwalala, just outside the city of Mbabane. So we are not expecting actually the presence of any representatives from South Africa, because according to the diplomatic protocols, they are already represented by the state here in Eswatini, because this is their jurisdiction, and the law dictates in terms of the limits, as I said earlier, as to when can this process be concluded. There's a number of days. They're saying 30 that they must act within those days. So that is why then the prosecution on the side of South Africa, they still maintain that they are still way on time. And someone was actually saying that they want to ensure that all gaps are closed. Maybe that's why they are taking time to ensure that everything is done according to the book, because this is not just a small matter, it's a sensitive matter, and it's someone who is well known not only in South Africa but beyond the borders. And they'll want to make an example to say that this is what we have done, and that is why then they are very bold and emphatic to say that we can't, this is not the first time we are doing this, we can't start something that we can't be able to conclude. So they are very confident that they are still on track in as far as the extradition application is concerned. But of course, we'll hear today if indeed the papers are ready. But at this point, it doesn't seem that they are ready. Chances are very slim for us to see this application, formal application, being made in court. The focus will rather be on the detention of the cell phones, for those 4 cell phones to be taken back to South Africa, to be in the possession of the South African Police Service.
100%. Mweli Masilela, our reporter there, speaking to us from Mbabane in Eswatini. Of course, a high-profile case is seeing many very concerning delays there. Thank you so much for giving us that update nonetheless.